Daled, Amid Beis, the bottom line. Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says in the name of his teacher Shmuel. Yes. And says in the name of his teacher Shmuel. We're now on top of Pei. Bar shebein shtei chatzeros maflegas mekaisel ze'arba. We're dealing with here is two courtyards. In between the courtyards is a bar, a cistern, a well to get water from. Now, normally, we've had cases like this before. There's a well, and it's a shared property by two people. So either they make an Eruv, or they put a mechitza taluya, a hanging wall, over the middle of the well, and each one can take from his side. That's what we learned before. Over here, it's slightly different, because over here, the well is not a shared property. They have two separate courtyards. In between the courtyard is sort of like a little alleyway that doesn't belong to anyone. There's actually no door in between their properties in this alleyway. So it's not considered like they're sharing a property with this alleyway, with this well. The only access that they have to this well is through putting in a bucket and lowering it down. That's their only access. They don't really share it. So that being the case, they don't need the Eruv, and they don't need the wall in between them as well. There's no halacha that you need an Eruv for an area that you really don't have access to. Now, they have an access, but it's not a real access. It's access just through lowering down a string on a bucket to be able to get the water out. So, what's the halacha over here? It says, Zem maitzi ziz kol shehu mamali, zem maitzi ziz kol shehu mamali. They put out a ziz, and Rashi spells it out that the ziz actually does nothing. There's no halachic significance. All it does is it makes a heker that in other cases you should be careful. So they let you know that something's going on here. That you put out a ziz is just a protrusion, a beam that protrudes from the wall. You let the ziz go out, and then you can fill up. Each one can lower the bucket down, and get the water. Rav Yehuda didei amar filukani. Rav Yehuda himself, you see, this was a student of Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel that you have to use a ziz, a beam protruding that would go out, I guess the 4 tefachim. Should go out 4 tefachim, or maybe up until the well. But that's what he says in the name of Shmuel. And he himself says that, look, once you're doing that, you don't really need a ziz, mamish, the beam that comes from the wall. You could use even a kana, even a reed that sticks out. That's also considered a heker. It's just a heker. It's just something to let you know that what you're doing here would not be halachically acceptable in every case. In this case, you don't need anything. Okay. Comes along the Abaya. Amalei Abaya Rav Yosef. Abaya says to his teacher Rav Yosef. Now, Abaya didn't hear the whole statement. He didn't hear what Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel. He only heard what Rav Yehuda said, that you can use a kana. So he says like this: Had Rav Yehuda to Shmuel. This that Rav Yehuda says that you can use a kana, that follows Shmuel's opinion. Now, obviously he didn't hear Shmuel's opinion, because Shmuel said you need a ziz, which is more than a kana. So he only heard Rav Yehuda's opinion. Rav Yehuda said first what Shmuel holds, and he himself says what he holds. Abaye hears only what he holds. He says, oh, that must be Shmuel. So, but he's contrasting it to Rav, so it's going to work. The Rav, because if it would be Rav's opinion that says that you don't need a ziz that's sticking out to go over the well, because they're both getting water from a well, which seems to be like a common area, without an Eruv. And there's a special case over here because it's really not a common area, because there's a wall between that doesn't allow them to go there. So it's not, usually an Eruv is only when there's a doorway to get into that area. Here, there's no doorway. You're just using a string to get in. So, Rav said that derech avir does nothing. Derech avir does nothing. We have to see. We'll see soon how this comes out. So what we're saying over here is that according to Rav, you would need there would be no requirements. You wouldn't need a ziz, you wouldn't need a kana, you wouldn't need anything. It's only according to Shmuel that holds that avir is an issue. Avir means the airway, that you're using the airway. Both chatzers using the airway, that's where it comes to be an issue. It's only Shmuel. The Gemara says there's Shmuel mehecha. Where does he know Shmuel from? That Shmuel says that there's an issue here, and that's why a kana works, and that's why you need a kana. You need to read. If we say it's this that Reb Nachman said in the name of Shmuel, Reb Nachman was a student of Shmuel as well. What we learned at the end of yesterday's Gemara, that there's I saw over here a better picture. Let's use the better picture. So here is a Rishus Harabim that's going along the side. And here's a gag, a roof. And the problem is that there's two groups of people that have access to this roof. One is the people of the courtyard. One is the Rishus Harabim. Now, that being the case, the Rishus Harabim is going to make this gag aser, because they can use this roof. So what do? You put a sulam here. This sulam, this ladder, makes it that this roof really belongs to the courtyard, not to the Rishus Harabim. It makes that the primary usage of this roof is the chatzar, is the courtyard. Okay, so what are we learning from that? That Shmuel says, how is the Rishus Harabim using that roof? Well, they get close to the roof and they put something on it. But the way it's explained, is how Rashi brings this out, is that usually the Rishus Harabim doesn't get that close to the roof. I think there was another picture there. Let's do that. Usually there's something in the way. Let's take a look if he has another one. No. Oh, there's our pit in between. This is our bar in between the two windows. That's what we're talking about. And that's a ziz. It's just a pole that's sticking out. He discusses how deep the pole, the ziz needs to go. It doesn't need to go over the bar. Okay, he's quoting Rashi, has a discussion about how to get water out of the ocean when you're in a boat. The boat would be Rishus Hayachid. The ocean is a Carmelis. Over there, we needed a little bit more. Okay, this picture here lets you see what's going on. This is what we're looking for. You can't really get that close to the house to be able to get your things on the roof. He's not showing you the roof. So what's happening is that they put these things in the ground, similar to what they do for security in front of buildings. They put planters there. So they have these things here that don't let the people of the Rishus Harabim, or the carts or whatever, the trucks, to get too close to the houses. So if that's the case, so then the Rishus Harabim is throwing things up onto the roof because they can't really get that close. If they can't really get that close, then what's the usage of the roof? The usage of the roof is derech avir. They have to throw it up there. It's not really a direct usage. So what we're seeing here is that Shmuel holds that derech avir, using something just through the ear space, is considered a usage, and therefore there's some necessary requirements. The Gemara says, 1 second. Dilma kid Rav Papa. Maybe it's like Rav Papa says yesterday at the end of the Gemara. We said that they weren't really putting heavy things up there. They were just putting their hat and their jacket up on the roof. So even though they can't get that close, but to be able to put the hat on that, they're close enough. It's not considered derech havir. They're putting it right up. Tosfos has a discussion about this. Why, if it's something heavier, then they're throwing it, and when it's lighter, it's not. It has to do with if they were using sticks to carry things. Whatever the case is, it's not a good support. It doesn't mean that it's tashmish derech havir. But that's what we're looking for. We're looking for, where does Shmuel say that tashmish derech havir, that the usage of airspace is considered the usage of that area, and you would require some way of fixing it. So we thought we had a support from this, that the Rishus Rabbim is using a roof. We say that it's not a support. They're not using the avir. Elameha. Okay, we need another support for Shmuel. Where does Shmuel say this? It says, this is an interesting Gemara. We quote the original Shmuel. See, we had two statements here. We had Shmuel says, how do you fix the usage of this well between the two properties? You have a ziz protrude. The ziz is a pole that protrudes from the roof. Rav Yehuda said you only need a kana. Abaya says, Rav Yehuda has to be following Shmuel. He can't be following Rav. So where does he follow Shmuel? So we find some Shmuel statement about using a roof. So that's not a good proof. We found Shmuel's statement. Shmuel says that you need a ziz. Back to the original statement. Shmuel says you need a ziz. You see, Abaye never heard that Shmuel said it. So now, I guess Rav Yosef tells him or whatever. So he says you use that original statement that he says that you have a ziz. Time adapik. The reason why it works is because it was a ziz that was protruding, that was considered a heker. That's a proof that when you're using the avir, you have to fix it. Holayapik. But if you don't have a ziz sticking out, we would say that the fact that you have two properties, each of them using an area, derech avir, there's no doorway. They're just using it through putting a rope over and hanging down, just the airspace without an actual door, that's asers, that we see from this case of the bar. Now the Gemara goes back to Rav. You told me that Rav doesn't hold of this at all. Rav holds that derech avir is nothing. The Rav mehecha. Where does Rav say this? If you say from the following case, we had a case similar to this yesterday. If I have two platforms, like porches, sticking out of a house, and these porches are there to be able to get water, from beneath them. There's water beneath these porches. So the distance between the two porches is 10 tefachim. The Gemara doesn't say that. Rashi spells it out. We said that you're supposed to do a mechitza to be able to get the water out. Let's see if he gave us a picture here. No, we don't have it here. He wants us to go back to picture 41. Let's do that. Okay. If you remember, we had this example yesterday, that what you do is you make a hole in this platform or this porch, and you put up a mechitza. Now you're going to use the hole as a bucket, for the bucket to go through, and then you're going to pull it up through this mechitza. Now what we were saying is that mechitza tuli yashmei mechitza, that even though it's hanging, the mechitza doesn't protrude all the way down into the water, or you can make a mechitza under it as well, the same thing. But it doesn't need to go all the way down. Even though it's hanging, it's a special heter when it comes to water, that you're able to use a mechitza like that. So what we're saying now is that if you made the mechitza for the upper one, but you didn't make the mechitza for the lower one, so how's the lower one going to be able to get his water? He's He's going to have to throw his bucket up, let it go down, hang into the water through the mechitza, because you can't get the water out of the ocean, or out of the you can't get the water in your bucket out. You can't pull it up into your rishus because that's a karmelis. That area is considered a karmelis. The water area is considered a karmelis, and your rishus is a rishus yachid. You're not allowed to go from a karmelis. You're not allowed to take from a rishus from a karmelis to rishus yachid. The only way to do it is if you use the mechitza. So you have to get it through the mechitza. So you go from your area to the next area, to your friend's kasustra. You lower it down. Now, it says like this. Shnei masuras hachi arvu. Oh, that means two people are using one area. They need an Eruv. So that's considered like a common area. It requires an Eruv. So, but one second, what type of usage do they have? It's not a real usage. It's a derech avir usage, because he's throwing it up to them. Does a derech avir really make a difference? So va'amar Rav Huna Marav leishana ola besmucha. That's only if it's very close, 10 tfachim. In other words, I have a lower one and I have a higher one, but the higher one needs to be samach to the lower one, not mufleges, not apart. So the distance is 10 tfachim, yeah. It's 10 tfachim higher. But how far away is it? That's the question. So Rav Huna, who's a student of Rav, he says that this halacha, that they're both aser, the upper one can't use it because the lower one is using the upper one and they don't have an Eruv. That's only if they're very close and they're considered both using the same area. The upper one becomes a common area for both. Aval b'mafleges arba, but let's say one is distant from it 4 tfachim away. So then, then we say that the lower one doesn't really have any usage of the upper one. 4 tfachim away means that it doesn't have access. Why not? Because it's derech avir. You have to throw it 4 tfachim. To just reach up 10 tfachim and put it on, that's not derech avir. But a distance this way of horizontal distance of 4 tfachim is going to be considered derech avir through the airspace, and that's not considered usage. Okay, so we seem to have a support for what we were looking for. That Rav holds tashmish derech avir is not considered tashmish, and it's not considered a usage, and therefore one area won't. Back to our case with the pit, that it's 4 tfachim away from the houses. We're not going to say that that's usage is considered a common usage. It's not considered a usage at all. The Gemara says, 1 second. It's not 100% support, because Dilma Shani Hachad, Kivin Dil Zeb Zrikal B'Shilshel, Zeb B'Shilshel L'Chudei, Kol Zeb Zrikal Zeb Pesach Tam. See, we had an issue before like this. We had a machlekes yesterday. We compared going up versus going down, lowering something down and throwing something up, if that was considered equal difficulty or equal usage. Going up the stairs or going down the stairs. It was really lowering a bucket down or pulling it up. What's considered more difficult, because the reason why that discussion came about is you're saying if 2 people have access to something, which one has more access? The one that has to lower down or the one that has to throw it up? So Shmuel held that lowering it down is a much easier access, and therefore that area would belong to the one that's above, because he only has to lower it down, it becomes his area. But throwing it up, that's not easy access, that's difficult. Rav said that it's equal. That's what we sniped before. Rav said Shnei Masurim. Both, it's considered that it's equal access, and then they require an Eruv and all types of issues. Now we're saying, I know that Rav holds that. I know that Rav holds that it's equal access. But there's one factor here that we didn't put in. So in other words, here we have 2 gezus choice. One's above the other one. We said that there's a problem with the upper one. Why is there a problem with there's a problem because the lower one uses the upper one. Well, he has to throw it up. That's a problem. He says, well, it doesn't matter. Throwing it up is the same to Rav as lowering it down. It doesn't matter. The only thing is that now it's distant. So we said, okay, so the reason why that doesn't become a problem, that it's distant, it becomes mutter, the upper one, it's because tashmish derech avir. And we're saying maybe it's not tashmish derech avir. Maybe there's two issues here. First of all, he has to throw it up. Then he has to, when it gets here, he lowers it down. So him throwing it up and lowering it down becomes different than just throwing it up alone or lowering it down alone. And maybe Rav never spoke about that before, that it's considered equal. Maybe over here, what we're going to consider it is that Lezeb is Rika or Lezeb Pesach Tami. The one that's the lower one doesn't have access because he has to throw it up and he has to move it over. Throw it and move it over. And the other one just has to lower it down from the hole in the platform. So maybe it's not an issue of derech avir. Maybe it's an issue of easy access. And we're going back to that machlekes that we had before. Who is the main owner of that area because of the access? It's not a din in derech avir. So therefore, we don't have a proof from that. I'm sorry, Naftali?
Yeah. What's the Shabbos status of this platform, or previously the Zeev?
Let's consider Rishus HaYachid. What we're trying to gain over there is that the Rishus HaYachid would extend downward into the water. And when you take water out, you're taking it through like a tube, a Rishus HaYachid tube, all the way up. The problem is that there's an apartment right next to you that also wants to use your tube to get the water out, but you didn't make an Eruv with them. So are you allowed to use it alone? Are you allowed to use it just because they exist and you didn't make an Eruv? It doesn't become a common area. So we have different ways of viewing this right now because they're a little removed away from you. So maybe it's not considered a common area because Tashmish Derech Avir, their usage is Derech Avir. That's what we thought originally. Now we're saying, no, it doesn't have to do with Derech Avir. It has to do with easy access. You have easier access, so it becomes your area, and it's not their area. That's where we're holding now.
Further question: why, in this case of this platform, and when we were talking about the roof, also, there's no discussion about simply who owns it. Now, you had to put a sulam up to indicate that you're using the roof.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the Gemara just say, well, it depends on who owns it? The person who owns it, it says Rishus HaYachid. And the people traveling on the Rishus HaRabim can't use it.
Right. The case of the sulam, that was to show us over there. There were also two access. The two groups of people had access. The Chatzar had access, and the Rishus HaRabim had access. When you put up the sulam, that was made it like you had the staircase to use to go directly up there. Everyone else had difficult access. They didn't have any staircase. They wanted to use that. They had to throw it up or something, to throw it there. So that's not considered that they have access to it in relative to someone that has a staircase. That was showing who really uses that area. The staircase, the ladder showed that was considered the area of the Chatzar, not the Rishus HaRabim. Yeah, it's the same concept, that we're showing who has the access to that area. Okay, we're up to Ella. It's about 5 lines from the bottom. Ella mihada damarav Nachman amarav baravua amarav. Rather, we're looking for a support for Rav that holds derech avir is not considered usage. You need an actual doorway. So we have it from Rav Nachman, in the name of Rabbi Baravua, was his father-in-law. We always thought it's Yalta's father. I don't know. It's Rav Nachman's wife. Amarav, he says in the name of Rav. Shnei batim. You have 2 houses. And you have 3 broken down houses between them. I'll show you a picture, but you'll get an understanding of this, how this is going to work. Okay. Here's a house on this side. Here's a house on this side. There's a window here. And this house is considered a broken house. It's considered a churva. Then there's a churva in the center. And then there's another churva here. So what's going to happen is that this area here is going to be considered the usage of this house. This churva here is going to be considered the usage of this house. And the one in the center is going to be asr. We're going to discuss exactly how this works. Now, later on, the Gemara is going to make it slightly different. The Gemara is going to make it more like a tripod. But meanwhile, it's 3 in a row. That's how the Gemara is looking at this right now. Okay. So, Shnei Batim Shalosh Chorva Spineim. Zem Mishtamash B'Samach Shaloi Al Yedei Zrika. They don't really have a door. It's just a window. So this one can throw out of his house on Shabbos into the area that's right next to him. And in yeshivas, they do this. If there's any area that they can put their garbage that's not the garbage can, they're going to throw it over there. Oh, that's an empty lot. They'll throw it out the window into the empty lot. And it's not a problem until it becomes a problem. That's how it works. So sometimes they have this like a broken wall, like the doorknob makes a hole in the wall. So that becomes a place where they can stuff things until it becomes an issue. So here there's a broken down house. So they throw things out. They use it al yedei zrika. And the other side also does the same thing. They use the house that's next to them through throwing out the window. They don't have a door. They just put it through the window. Now, what we're saying over here is that technically the other side could throw across all the houses into your house or into your churva, the one that's right next to you. Now, if that's the case, then why are you allowed to use the one that's right outside your house? The one that's the other side could throw, there's a direct access through throwing. He could throw straight across and try to get it into your churva. And he could also use that. Al Yedei Zrika should become asur. Now, okay. Now, what about your own? Is your own area Zrika? No. Your own area is called shilshul. It's called lowering it down. You just take it to the window and you drop it. That's not considered Zrika. Right outside your window, you just lower it down. That's not Zrika. Zrika would mean that you have to throw it either across or up or something. Yeah, you have to throw it across. So the fact that you're allowed to use your churva, you're allowed to lower things out of your window into this broken down house on Shabbos tells me that Zrika of the other side doesn't asur your area. This is a very good raya. That derech avir is not considered a usage. It's only, you're the only one that has access to it. The other side doesn't have, they do have access, but that access isn't considered access because it has to go through airspace. It's not an actual doorway where they can walk through and put it there. Okay. Seems like a good raya. But the middle one is asur. There's a problem with the middle one being asur. Why is the middle one asur? It shouldn't be asur at all. The Gemara is going to discuss this in a moment. We're going to switch the story. We're going to switch the scenario. But meanwhile, we understand why each side is mutter for each side because the other one's access to it is al yedei zrika, and Rav holds that derech avir doesn't asur. Yosef Rav Bruna v'ka'amar la shmaita. Rav Bruna was sitting and he was saying over this halacha. Amar Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar says to him, Barbe Rav, Yeshiva Bacher. I guess that's what he calls him. Yeshiva Bacher. Amar Rav Hachi. Did Rav actually say that? Amalayan, he says, yeah, Rav said that. Rav says that the side churvas are mutter and the middle one is asur. He says, show me where he lives. Show me where Rav lives, where Rav is staying. Rav Bruna shows him. Asalakami the Rav comes in front of Rav. Amarlei says to Rav, Rabbi Lazar started in Bavel, went to Eretz Yisrael, he ends up learning with Rabbi Yochanan. I don't know when this is taking place. I don't know if this is before he left. I don't know, and I'm not familiar enough with Rav Bruna to know exactly the timing of this. So Amar Mar Hachi, he says to him, did Mar actually say this? Now, I assume it's Rabbi Elazar that's asking. Although it could have been Rav Bruna supporting himself, asking it. It leaves out. We just have the pronouns. He said to him, did the master actually say this? Amalayin? Rav says, yeah, I said this. Amalei v'amaru di amar, but the master said, if one throws and one of them can lower down, that's considered equal access. Rav said that before. We learned it today. We learned it yesterday. The Rav holds that's considered equal access. So here, why are you telling me that anything is mutter? This one lowers it down and this one throws it. That's considered an equal usage to both. That means it's a common area and it would require an Eruv. And we're using it now without an Eruv. So if that's the case,
where's the equal usage here? Just because they can both throw it?
Well, one of them, each one has access to his side.
Right, so that's the equal usage.
Right next to him, but the other one can throw it in.
Uh-huh.
So Rav says like this. Rav says, "Mi sabris tekaimi kishura." Do you think that the case that I was talking about is that it was a row, like we said before, that there's 1, 2, 3? Now he says no. The kaimi kechatzuva. It's talking about that it's set up like a tripod. Now, if you look in your Gemara, there's actually a picture there where you have, it says chaloin or bias, whatever. Then it has chorva, and then there's a chorva next to it. Let's look at his picture. This changes the story a bit. Now, what we're dealing with is, you have 3 courtyards. You have 3 chorvas, rather. But that one in the back has equal access to both. And it's these that are being used independently one from the other. What's going to be, though? The fact is that he can throw it, and this one can lower it down. The Rav holds Tashmish al Yedei Avir is in Tashmish. We were thinking, when we were thinking that the picture was like this, then we were saying that, why is this Aser? Why is the middle one Aser? It must be because they can both throw it into the sentence. That means that Tashmish al Yedei Avir is considered Tashmish. That means that it is a usage to both of them. If it's a usage to both of them, and that's why this is Aser, then the side should be Aser also, because he could throw it to the side. And then this area is considered a common area, just like the center was a common area. The Gemara says, no, the center was a common area, not because of throwing, because it actually is a common area, because it's actually one area for both. Why are these mutter, this one for this and this for this, is because it's not through Zrika, Al Yedei Avir or something. It's directly outside your window. Okay, Rashi takes this back and goes and discusses what's going on with the bar. Meanwhile, that's the pshat that we have here. Amalei Rav Papa Rav Alei Mishmol Les Leider Rav Dimi. We didn't learn Rav Dimi yet, so we're going to learn in a moment. Rav Papa says to Rava, sounds like Shmuel doesn't hold the Rav Dimi. The Chiyas Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yechanan, because when Rav Dimi came, he said, "Name of Rabbi Yechanan, Makom Shein Bei Daled Al Daled Mutal of Neirishas Rabim of Neirishas Yachal Lekativ Alav Bavad Shlei Yachlifo." If there's an area in Rishas Rabim that's not Daled Al Daled, or it's in between Rishas Rabim and Rishas Yachid, so it's not Daled Al Daled. I mean, it's not 4 by 4 Tvachim. So it's not considered a Rishus B'fnei Atzmei. It's like a Makom P'tur. So Rishas Rabim can use it, put their things down to rest on it. It's not 10 Tvachim tall. Or is it 10 Tvachim? No, it's. I think it's in between 3 and 10. So Rishas Rabim can use it. Rishas Yachid can use it. The only thing is that they can't take something from Rosh Hashanah and put it there, and then Rosh Hashanah puts it in Rosh Hashanah. You can't you can't move it from Rosh Hashanah onto the free zone and then move it over into Rosh Hashanah. That's not going to work. But from your area itself, you can move it. Now, it's a little bit of an issue. Shmuel Bayas said that when you have a pit that's in this area, sort of like a free zone, you needed to have a ziz that was sticking out. Over here, you don't need any ziz. Each one is using this sort of like a common area. The Rosh Hashanah can use it, Rosh Hashanah can use it. There's no siman. What's going on? It must be that Shmuel doesn't hold the Rav Dimi. When it says Hasam Rishis Deiraisa, over there it's a different story. I'm dealing with Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah. That's very serious things. Hacha Rishis Deirabanan. Here I'm dealing with Rishis Deirabanan, the both Rosh Hashanah. The Chacham Masachizuk L'Devrei Yesim Mishal Torah. When it comes to a Deirabanan, the rabbis made it stricter. They added special halachas. You shouldn't be lenient about the rabbanans, so they made it stricter that you need to have a ziz that's protruding. Amalei Ravina l'Rava. Ravina says to Rava, Mi amar Rav Hachi. Does Rav actually say that derech avir is nothing? That if the only access is through a window or over a wall, it's not considered a usage. For itmar, but we have a statement. Shnei batim, shnei tzidur shesarabim. You have two houses on both sides of the street. Rabba bar Rav Huna Amar Rav. Rabba bar Rav Huna says in the name of Rav, Asa Lizrik Mizelazeh. Now, when you're going to throw it over, you're going to throw it above the Rosh Hashanah. So it's really going through a makam tour. But Rav says you're not allowed to throw it from one house to your house across the street. Shmuel Amar Mutter. Shmuel says it's not. Mutter Lizrik Mizelazeh. Shmuel says you're allowed to. Now, why are you not allowed to throw it according to Rav? The understanding is like this. The Rosh Hashanah uses that area above 10 tfachim to carry. They carry things up there. That's considered tashmish derech avir. They're carrying things that are above. So that airspace is being used derech avir by the Rosh Hashanah and by this fellow that wants to throw it across. So the Rosh Hashanah, the derech avir of the Rosh Hashanah is ruining his game of catch that he has with the rest of his family.
Doesn't the Rosh Hashanah, the Avir, only go so high?
Yeah. Usually we say that the actual Rosh Hashanah is only until 10 Tvachim. But now we're talking about the Tashmish of the Rosh Hashanah, the usage of the Rosh Hashanah, that makes it that airspace can't be used. It's a common airspace. It's like a Dini Eiruvin issue. It becomes a common airspace, not as Rosh Hashanah deraisa, but also a common airspace. Amalei, he says that's not the issue. Lavmi yukimna de midlichad de mitzechad. Are we talking about that one is hanging and one is lower? That means that it's not parallel. The porch that you're using to throw across is higher than the other one, and when you're going to throw it across, it's going to fall down. Because zimnin de migdav enough of asilasui, it's going to fall down. We're afraid that you're going to go down and get it, and you're going to carry from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. It's funny, the Gemara doesn't say we're worried that it's going to fall, and that's the issue itself. It says, and then maybe because that's b'shogeg. But then we're afraid that you're going to go down and get it. That's the issue. Okay. A new Mishnah, in case it wasn't clear. You have a new something easy to learn now. Someone puts the common Eruv that is supposed to be in a home to show that home is the real home of everyone that lives in that chutzah. They don't put it in their own house. They put it in a Beis Shar, that's the guardhouse. Achsadra, they put it in this is an area that has a roof, but it doesn't have the front wall. It's an awning or a portico. Merpesa, so they put it on a porch. Porch is the area that you walk up the stairs, and that's like an entranceway that you can go into your room or apartment. Eina Erev. It's not considered an Erev. Vahadarsham. Let's say someone actually lives in that Beis Shar or he lives outside, he doesn't have a place to live. They say, okay, you can sleep in our courtyard outside, in the achsaj, in the open area, or in the merpeset. It's like the hallway. So Eino Eiser Alav, he doesn't need to contribute to the Eruv. If they made an Eruv without him, he doesn't count. He doesn't have a dwelling place there. He's just hanging out outside. That's not a dwelling place. Beis HaTeven, Beis HaBaka, Beis Eitzim. This is already like a shed. He has a place where he stores his grain, or animals, or he stores his wood, Beis HaOitzros, some other sort of storage. Hareza Eruv, that's already a place where someone could live. It's like a back house. V'adar Eiser. So if you put the Eruv there, or if someone lives there, that if you put the Eruv there, it's considered a good Eruv. And if someone lives there, he has to contribute to the Eruv. If he doesn't, then the Eruv is invalid. Rabbi Yehuda says, there's a little bit of a leeway here, that if the owner has kalim in that shed, then it's considered like he is the one that lives there, and the other person is like a guest over there, but he's the main owner, and you don't need to. This person doesn't need to contribute to the Eruv. We spoke about this, about the leniency in hotels. The owner, the hotel owner owns the furniture, the dressers and the beds and the refrigerator and all of those things that are in the room. It's considered like it's his. You happen to be there as well, but it's considered like it's his room. That's the lenient opinion on that. Amar Rav Yehuda Breder Rav Shmuel Bar Shelas. Rav Yehuda, the son of Rav Shmuel Bar Shelas. Shmuel Bar Shelas was known as a teacher. Anywhere where it says that someone that lives there doesn't count, and if he doesn't contribute to the Eruv, it doesn't matter. So therefore, if that's the case, if someone puts his Eruv into that house where the person that lives there doesn't count, that's not an Eruv. Very interesting. There's only one person in this courtyard, and there's a Beis Shar, and someone lives in the Beis Shar, then that's considered a dwelling place. If this is a public, there's a bunch of people that live in this courtyard, and there's someone living in the Beis Shar, then he doesn't count. But if there's only one person there, then this sort of temporary dwelling is already considered a dwelling. He already has so it's considered like he has someone. He has someone living there. If it's a bunch of people living there in proper houses, and there's a Beis Shar, the Beis Shar doesn't matter. Anywhere where the sages said that you can't put an Eruv into there, you're allowed to put a Shituf there. What's the difference, Eruv and Shituf? Eruv is the joining of houses in a courtyard to have one common house. And then the courtyard becomes it becomes the area of one family because they all have one house. What's a Shituf? Shituf is where I join all the courtyards. And then the alleyway becomes the alleyway of one courtyard because all the courtyards are really one. They have one courtyard. So the difference between an Eruv and a Shituf is an Eruv is joining a home, and a Shituf is joining the courtyards. So where I'm not allowed to put the Eruv, I'm allowed to put the Shituf. I can't put an Eruv in a courtyard because that's not a home. But the Shituf doesn't go in a home. Shituf goes in the courtyard. Chutz mi'avir mavi, but you can't put it into the airspace of the alleyway because I'm not joining an alleyway. I'm joining the courtyards, and therefore there's only one courtyard to this alleyway. My Kamash Malan, what are you telling me? Tanina, we know that from a Mishnah. If someone puts his Eruv into the guardhouse or to the portico or into the porch, it's not considered an Eruv. We know that already. Eruv hu d'lo yahavi. We know that it's not an Eruv. Medayik. This implies Hashitav Havi, but it could be a Shitav. The Gemara explains, Beishar the Yachid Vavir the Mavi, it's Shrichulei. He had a Chiddush. We didn't know from that a Beishar the Yachid, if there's one person that lives there, plus there's someone that lives in the Beishar, that's going to be an issue, or that you can't put it into the airspace of a Mavi. That we didn't know. The Leitanan, that wasn't taught in the Mishnah. Okay, Tanya Nami Hachi was also taught in the Brisa. The Beis Shar, Someone puts his Eruv into a guardhouse, achsadra, the portico, that open area, merpeses, or a porch, ubechatzer, ubamavi, or he puts it into the courtyard, or he puts it into the alleyway. So, hareza Eruv, it works. Really, this is very surprising. But Tanan ain't Eruv, but we just learned that it doesn't work. The Gemara explains, Ema hareza shituf. Switch one word and everything fits. Not that it's an Eruv, it's hareza shituf. It means that's the joining of an alleyway of the courtyards. Yeah, because it doesn't need to go into a home. It could go into the outside area. Shituf b'mavai leminta. 1 second, you can't put it into the alleyway. One of the cases there was you said you put it into the alleyway and it's good. Ema b'chatzer shebemavi. Don't say that you put it into the alleyway. It's good. It means you put it into the courtyard of the alleyway. What this means to tell me is that it needs to be in one of the courtyards of this alleyway. I can't put it into some other place. Oh yeah, I have my Eruv and it's in the bank. Safe deposit box. That's not going to work. It needs to be in somewhere in one of the courtyards of this specific alleyway. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, B'nei Chabur Shein Mesubin. Rav Yehuda says the name of his teacher Shmuel. There's a group of friends and they're eating. The Kiddush Aleim Hayom becomes Shabbos. Pasal Shulchan Semchalim Shemerev. There's bread on the table. That's considered the Eruv. They don't have to make a special Eruv. What they're doing now is the Eruv. It's one meal they're having together. They have bread on the table. Some say that works as shituf. Amar Rabba v'lei pligi. Rabba says that they're not arguing. Is it an Eruv or is it a shituf? It depends. If they're in a home, it's an Eruv. If they're outside the home and they're eating outside like a picnic, like everyone eats outside, so then that would be considered a shituf. Yeah, Dr. Stein wants to ask, what if it's in the sukkah? Okay. Amarle Abaya Rava. Abaya says to Rava, Tanya de Messiah. I'll bring us support for you. Eruv chatzeres b'chatzer, shitufim mavavis b'mavai. To Rabba. Abaya saying to Rabba. The Eruv goes into the chatzer. The shituf goes into the alleyway. It's going to be a problem. Vavinamba. We deliberated on this. What's going? We asked the question. Eruv chatzeres b'chatzer. You put the Eruv into the courtyard. It can't stay in the courtyard. But if you put it into one of these outside areas, it's not considered a good Eruv. The Gemara answers, Ema Eruv chatzeres b'bayis shebechatzer, and shitufim mavayis b'chatzer shebemavay. It goes into the house of the Eruv goes into the house of the chatzer, and the shitufim mavayis goes into the courtyard of the mavay, which is what Rabbah said, that a shituf could be in the courtyard. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Yesham Tvisas Yad Chulu. Rabbi Yehuda says that if there is an ownership, and the owner of this area, use the other one, because I'm in the middle of writing. Let me ask Sarah. Oh, Sarah, can you help Zisi? If the owner owns Kalim in that area, so it's considered like he owns that area, and doesn't require an Eruv. Hechidami Tvisas Yad. What's the case of Tvisas Yad, that he owns something? It says Chatzerei Shel Bunyas ben Bunyas. It's another girsa. Saban ben Nanas. It's another girsa. Bunyas ben Bunyas. Apparently, he was a wealthy person. He owned a lot of real estate, and he would rent out these apartments, and he had so many kalim that he kept kalim in every one of these fully furnished apartments. So it didn't require an Eruv. That's what we're saying. Osalakam Chatzir Shel Bunyas ben Bunyas. Just 1 second. Shel ben Bunyas. That's what it's supposed to say. Now, Kiyasa Lakami the Rebbe. When he came in front of Rebbe, this Bunyas, Ben Bunyas, Amalu, Panu Makal and Ben Meyamana, Rebbe says, clear the area. This person owns 100 mana. In other words, everyone stand up for him. He has 10,000 coins. This is a wealthy man. Everyone Give acknowledgement to this person. Also in the Shachrina, another person came. Amrlo, Rebbe says, Panamakla ben Masayim, to make area for this, clear the way for this person. He's even more important. He owns 20,200 mana. It's 200 times 100. Amalafan of Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi, Aviv Shalzeh, Yesh la Elef Sfinas Bayam. The first fellow, I know he only has 10,000 coins, but his father has boats in the sea. And he has islands or cities, 1,000 cities. When you reach his father, tell him, if that's the case, if he's so wealthy, then he shouldn't send me this type of or come to me with these type of kelim. He should wear better. He should wear a different kapata. He's that wealthy. Let him dress differently or send different. I'm not sure if he's sending a gift or if he's wearing it when he comes. The Gemara says Rabbi Mechabed Ashirim. Rabbi would give respect to wealthy people. Yeah, I think the Kutzker said Rabbi would even give respect to wealthy people. He respected everyone. That's not the pshat. The Rebbe touched it like this: that if the Eibishter trusts him, then Rebbe also gave him, if someone that the Eibishter trusts. What happens is that when you give a child the cookies to distribute to everyone at the table or something, so they're not his. He's just handing them out, but he looks at each one and he's like, he wants to keep it. He gives like little pieces. He doesn't really. So what happens is the wealthy person gets the money from the Eibishter, and he's supposed to distribute it to however it's supposed to be distributed, tzedakah or whatever. So he looks at it like, it's not like the cookies in the child. But if he distributes it properly, that means the Eibishter is trusting him to give it out, and that's his job. He does it. He does his work. Rabbi Akiva Mechaved Ashirim. Rabbi Akiva also gave kavod to the wealthy people. The Eibishter trusted them to do the job. Kedidarish Rava or Rabba Bar Mari. Yeshiv Eilum Fneil Kim Chesed V'Emes Man Yitzru. The world sits in front of God. Chesed V'Emes Man Yitzru. Chesed V'Emes, the kindness and truth of the mezainas man, means the food that they distribute, is what protects it. When does the world sit in front of Hashem? When the tzedakah is being given, the food is being given out. Rabbi Bar Chana Amar, Rabbi Chana says, he says, even if he just keeps in there, we're talking about what does he keep in that house that it shouldn't require an Eruv, even if he just keeps in there a peg of the plow. Amar Rav Nachman Tanad Bishmol Davar Nitl B'Shabbos Eino Eiser. Davar Shein Nitl B'Shabbos. Davar Nitl B'Shabbos is Eiser. Davar Shein Nitl B'Shabbos Eino Eiser. He says like this: there's a little bit of a concern. If the person left in their items, the owner of the property left in their items, those items, the tenant could remove them because they're not muktzah. Then the owner really doesn't have any kalim in there. It's considered the tenant's house. So the only thing that's going to permit it is if it is not muktzah. I'm sorry, the only thing is if it is muktzah, where he can't remove it. If he can't remove it, then it's really there. Tani nami hachi yesh le tevel, yesh le yashashis. If he has tevel, that means fruits that Meiser wasn't taken, or if he has these pieces of metal, or anything that's muktzah, that he won't use. I want to do just one more small piece of here. That if it is muktzah, then it's going to be fine. The Mishnah says, someone leaves his house, he goes to another city. It's on Shabbos. Whether it's a Jew or a non-Jew, because the home without the tenant is still considered a home. Divrei Reb Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Eino Eiser. Rabbi Yehuda says no. A home without a tenant is not considered a home. Rabbi Yossi Omer Nachri Eiser Yisrael Eino Eiser. Rabbi Yossi says it depends. A Jew or a non-Jew. Why? She'ein derech Yisrael lavi b'Shabbos. The Jew is not going to come back on Shabbos. He's going to go finish the Shabbos over there, maybe because it's out of the Tchum. I'm not sure. Rabbi Shimon Oimer, afilu hiniach beisei v'halach lishbesei silbitai v'isa'ir ein oiser shekvar yisiyam miliba. Even if he just leaves Shabbos just to go to spend with his daughter in the same city, that's already considered that he's not home, and he doesn't need to contribute to that Eruv. The Gemara says, Amar Rav halacha k'Reb Shimon. Rav says, the halacha is like Reb Shimon, that if you leave even for that Shabbos to the daughter, it's fine. The daf kabita, but only if you're going to the daughter. Aval benai, but if you're going to your son, loy, doesn't work. If someone visits his son, it's different than he's visiting his daughter. The Amri Inchi, because people say, Navach b'ch kalba. If a son, kalba is a male dog. If a male dog barks at you, that means your son-in-law barks at you, don't worry. You can still go into the house. If the dog barks, don't be so concerned. You can go inside. But navach bach guraisa, but if a female dog barks at you, that means your daughter-in-law, that means you went to visit your son, then get out of the house. So it's easier to visit your daughter and the son-in-law is angry with you than to visit your son and your daughter-in-law is angry with you. Yes,